particularly loyal and wonderful Akita named Hachiko. Now, and if anybody's watched the movie, terrible acting by Richard Gere, but really, really cute puppy, and you'll cry at the end just because it's a really sweet story.
It's a sad story.
She says, I searched all these people for food already. I need to go on to the rest. But that story of Hachiko, essentially in 1932, a professor for the University of Tokyo got a puppy that he'd been waiting for. He got a purebred Akita, and that puppy was Hachiko. Hachi meaning eight. He was the 8th puppy of the litter born, and Ko, in this case referring to prince or duke, so he was the 8th prince of the litter. This puppy bonded with his owner, and every day when the professor would walk to the train station in Shibuya Station, the dog would go with him in the morning to see him off to work, and he knew what time that the professor came home, and he would walk back down from the professor's house to the train station and wait for his evening train every day. This was their routine for about a year and a half, and unfortunately there was one day the professor did not come home. He'd suffered a massive stroke and died while at work. And the dog actually continued his vigil every day. They tried taking him to relatives' houses. He would break free and show back up at the train station every morning and every afternoon for the next 9.5 years. His entire life he spent visiting the train station, waiting for his master to come home. He'd wait that about half-hour time period and then walk his way back home, sadly, because his master never showed. But that dedicated loyalty and the story of this dog, there's actually the original statue that they put up at Shibuya Station is no longer there. It got melted down at the end of World War II for arms and ammunition. But they have since erected a couple of different statues commemorating Hachiko and the Akitas in Japan. But that story in the early 30s brought Akitas to national attention in Japan and international attention as well for his story. And the governor at the time of Japan passed laws protecting them so that they didn't go extinct and named them a natural treasure of Japan.
Did you have your treats too?
For their amazing loyalty and
I ran out.
dedication. Now, in 1937, there was a very special lady who visited Japan. You guys may have heard of her, Helen Keller.
Mm-hmm.
She is actually responsible for the first Akita that was brought back to the United States. Something a lot of people don't know. That was when she toured Japan. She had heard this story of Hachiko and asked to be taken to Odate Prefecture and into Akita Province, where she could meet one of the dogs. What she didn't know at the time was that the Japanese government, through the help of a gentleman that taught the police task force in Akita Prefecture, and he bred and raised Akitas, they had arranged for her to be given an Akita dog because the Japanese, above all else, revere spirit, and they felt that Helen Keller was a living embodiment of spirit and soul and all of the things she had to overcome to live a full life, and that she didn't let anything hold her back. So she was very highly revered in Japan. When she was visiting Akita Prefecture, what happened is the gentleman that raised the dogs realized that an adult animal was probably not the best choice for her special situation. And instead, he gifted her with his own 11-week-old puppy that he'd had for about 3 weeks, that he'd been waiting for 2 years out of a specific bloodline. Gifted her with that puppy, which came back to the U.S. and was a wonderful companion for her. But unfortunately, at about 1.5 years old, he got distemper, common dog disease, and ended up passing away. She wrote back just to let them know what happened to the dog, tell them how wonderful he had been and what an impact he had made on her life as a constant companion. And they actually arranged, when news got back to the gentleman in Akita that had owned the puppy, he actually arranged, the government paid and sent her a litter mate, a full brother to the first puppy she had, who lived about 13 years here in the States, was a wonderful service animal, guardian, and companion for her. Now, after that, in 1937 and 38, it was a very long time before the Japanese let another Akita out of the country. Just like with their swords and a lot of their other culture, they hold that very closely. Don't let it leave easily. But eventually what happened is post-World War II and into about the early 70s, 1970s, the Japanese figured out, because they had request after request from Americans, kind of desperate to get their hands on an Akita dog and export them and bring them to this country, they figured out that, well, maybe we're not going to let them have the best dogs, but maybe these puppies that as breeding animals we would not have kept because they were either too small or way too large or showed indicators of having later health problems in life, such as hip dysplasia or thyroid issues. Thyroid affects your growth hormones. So if you had a litter of puppies, they were all the same size, but you had this one gigantic one. Usually, that was a puppy, which, as terrible as it is, would be considered a cull animal. For breeding, that means it would be killed. You wouldn't waste the resources and the food to raise an animal that you knew was going to carry genetic problems. Instead of doing that, though, they decided that, hey, these people don't know any better. Let's charge them $5,000 a puppy and make some profit on these. So unfortunately, a lot of the breeding stock that came back to the U.S. in the early 70s had a lot of genetic problems. Some people will go, I remember seeing this Akita growing up, but he was massive.